Hello and howdy. Welcome to Front Range Hockey. My name's CC, and what's your name again?
Uh, you know, I go by a lot of names, but a lot of people call me Scott. We'll go with
Oh,
that today. But
okay. Scotty Mac D, the Big Mac D,
something like that. Dater loves to call
something
me
like that.
Scott Mac Daddy McDonald, which is
Scott Mac Daddy McDonald.
it's sticking now in the Colorado Hockey Now circles. Everyone in the comments likes to call me that, and I
There
get
you
it
go.
on the tweets every once in a while as well. So I guess it's sticking. We'll take that.
Well, Scotty Mac D McDonald. I'm CC Hawkley. That's a lot of C's. But yeah, episode number 14 of Front Range Hockey. We're coming at you live on Wednesday, April 14th, 2021 on the YouTubes. And if you're listening afterwards, then welcome, whether in audio or video format. We're pleasant to listen to, and I'd say even more pleasant to look at. We're not bad looking
I'd like to
dudes.
think so. We clean up pretty well before these podcasts.
I would
So
say so. Yeah. I try and keep the beard nice and trimmed, my little line here, so I don't got the neck beard going
There
on.
you go.
So
And I try to grow a beard, but it doesn't work. But it's all good.
It's
I got a little
okay.
5 o'clock shadow. It's cool.
It's okay. It's all right. At least you don't have to, trim this, monstrosity you see on my face every week.
Yeah.
So it's not bad. But anyway, we've got a lot to talk about this episode. I feel like as the NHL season progresses more towards the playoffs, we're going to have a ton to talk about, especially with positive COVID tests. I mean, like you mentioned last episode, Scott, the Vancouver Canucks are just a triage unit up there and in Canada, and it's pretty bad. But I mean, now we're getting some residual for Colorado hockey here, but we will get to that here in a little bit. First and foremost, first things first. Haven't said that in a minute, but first things first. Let's talk about last night, Tuesday night. You decided to, and we had been talking about this for a while. It's something I eventually passed on because, I just did because of the work job or the day job and the work week and everything like that. I passed on it, but Scott, you did not. You made the decision when the announcement was made at 3 p.m. on Tuesday that Alex Newhook was going to be making his debut for the Colorado Eagles, and he didn't even know that he was going to be playing because his student visa was transferred over to a work visa because yes, he is a Canadian and he does have to apply for those things being in the United States here. So Scott made the trip up to Loveland and he got to see Alex Newhook make his NHL debut or AHL debut,
AHL.
rather. Not NHL. Come
Hey,
on.
soon enough though, right?
Absolutely, for sure. So with that said, I mean, we'll get into more observations from that game. And I went to the Texas Stars game on Saturday. So Scott, simply put, what did you see from Mr. Newhook there on the ice?
I mean, it was pretty much everything I kind of expected. One, I mean, I'll just say like I'm very excited. I've seen him before in person. I caught the game when I was covering DU and the Eagles last year. So Boston College, one of his first games as a freshman at Boston College a couple of years ago, was actually in DU at Denver. So him and fellow Boston College Eagle and Avs prospect Drew Hellison, came to Denver, and I got to watch them play, and they both actually recorded their first NCAA goals in the same game, which is kind of cool. So I got to see him a little bit, back in the day, but I will say, man, like the growth I've seen from him just in, small sample size, obviously. I haven't watched much of his action, his sophomore year at Boston College. This is the first time I've really seen him live since, 2 years ago at Denver. And I'm impressed. The kid's got speed. He's going to fit in, very, very well, I think, with this Avalanche team. And, obviously Joe Sakic knows that. That's the reason why he drafted him. Like he goes for the fast guys and the guys who are quick on their feet and quick with their hands. And, it's certainly what I saw. Like, I think there was obviously some nerves associated with it. And, I talked to him after the game too. And, I was like, it's kind of a crazy situation. Like he told me he found out, like 3 o'clock or shortly after 3 o'clock, which is 4 hours before the game, and had to kind of, bust his ass down to the rink, get his headshot done, and, just mentally prepare to make your pro debut. And, I did the same, found out last second. And like, I went down there and, I asked him, I was like, are there any nerves associated with, making like obviously you've kind of been like probably anxiety ridden for the last 2 weeks, where it's like, you're kind of just sitting in limbo. You never know which game you're gonna like, your visa is gonna get approved and you can play. But I would almost rather be, kind of just thrown to the wolves, a couple hours, like find out. Then you don't really have time to, think about making your debut. It's kind of just like, okay, let's get down to the rink, take my pictures, and like let's get to it. And that's kind of what he said too. He's like, I mean, I've been preparing for it for 2 weeks. Anyway, it was going to come. I kind of figured it was going to be like a situation like this. And it is what it is. But I think his first period, I thought he was pretty solid. And he even admitted, in the second period that his legs caught up to him, the pace caught up to him a little bit, is what he said. And maybe got a little out muscled at times. He's obviously I mean, he's a big guy. He's like, I think he's like 5'10", 180, 190, something like that. So he's got decent size for, being, I guess he just turned 20. But he definitely got pushed around at times. But, what I saw was he wasn't afraid to, he wasn't shying away from that kind of contact. Like he was still going hard in the corners, still going hard at pucks, which is great to see. There was no, intimidation at all. He seemed very confident. But, I think the first period he came out real fast, and I think it's probably because he was excited, maybe nervous, and wanted to really prove himself. And he almost scored a goal. And I posted on Twitter. I was recording like every shift for a while, just like praying that he'd score that first goal and I'd get it on tape. But he came damn close. And I posted that video on Twitter, and that's just, to me, if you watch that video, it's a good microcosm. We should have just prepped before, and we could have pulled it up for the video podcast.
Let me pull it up right now. I can just
try for it.
You keep talking and
yeah,
I'll pull it up.
I think that's that 20-second clip is a good microcosm from like, what I saw from him. And it's just, he's hustling at pucks. He almost cashes in on one. He's falling down in the ice. He's like really, he's going hard at the puck, which is what you want to see. And, I think he admitted after the game that like, it wasn't his best game. Eagles head coach Greg Cronin kind of said the same thing. He's like, it probably wasn't his best effort, but it's really too small of a sample size, and it's one game to really judge him and see what kind of player he's going to be. But we'll see tonight. They play like Wednesday night. This will be his second game.
Yep.
He's only going to get better as this thing goes. But the thing you have to kind of consider is, he only has, I think the Eagles only have 12 games left, something like that, 13 games.
Sounds right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, he's running out of time. Doesn't sound like there's going to be, an AHL playoff, and I'm not, quite sure I'm expecting him, and I really don't expect him to, step into the Avs lineup this season. I think that'd be kind of, a bit irresponsible to do that, and I think it'd be better just to give him those 13 games the AHL, and then, maybe you could call him up to the taxi squad at that point and kind of give him some reps there. But I'm not going to throw him into a Stanley Cup playoff game. I don't think he's, quite ready for that, and he's not Cale Makar. Like, everyone wants to compare him to Cale Makar as like this college guy, but Makar was, there an extra year in college. He was 21 when he made that debut, and he's a really special player. And I'm not saying Alex Newhook isn't. I think he is, but I kind of see it a lot as a Tyson Joe situation where at the tail end of the 2016-17 season, I think Tyson Joe's only played his freshman year at North Dakota, and probably could have benefited from taking that sophomore season at North Dakota, but instead, the Avs signed him after North Dakota's season ended in 2017. And then he kind of played, the last couple of games there. And to me, that's a big reason why I think Tyson Joe's is kind of, fallen behind on his development. And we're now starting to see like he's been playing very well, but, he's finally starting to get caught up, I think. And he could have benefited from, an extra year. And same thing with Newhook. He went to the World Junior Championship and got injured there at the tail end and missed some time. He missed a good portion of the opening of Boston College season. And I think he only played a dozen games or something with Boston College. So I was actually kind of shocked that, they decided to sign him and, instead of giving him an extra year, because, I don't necessarily think the Avalanche need Alex Newhook to kind of be rushed into it. I think their roster is pretty set, when you consider the Martin Kauts and the Shane Bowers that are, probably going to make the roster next season. And, the Logan O'Connors, I think the team's pretty well set for next year, but obviously Newhook said he felt ready when he made that signing, and obviously the Avalanche felt that he was ready. So, he might step into the lineup next season, but I don't think it's going to happen this season. But anyway, to wrap that up, as far as what I saw, it's exactly what you would expect from, a first year player. And I know a lot of people, watched it on AHL TV, so they probably saw the same thing I did, but, he'll get his confidence slowly but surely. And, he looks good. There's definitely certain flashes. Like I love his foot speed. He's very quick. He hustles. He's not afraid to be physical, which is great. And yeah, I think that's my kind of synopsis.
Speaking of synopsis, we've got the video. We have the videotape or the recording rather. Videotape's kind of a dated reference these days.
It's all right.
But yeah, so we've got it here. Let's go full screen for Twitter. This was the goal that could have been for Alex Newhook. So let's start it here. Oh,
so close.
So close.
But see, I mean, like he falls down, gets right back up, and look at that little speed. That's just him going to the bench right there. He's even hustling to go to the bench, which is what you want to see. And I like that. Yeah. I like that he's not afraid to rub shoulders with the Bakersfield Condors have a pretty old roster, so
they do.
He's 20, and a lot of the Eagles are very young, especially now with Sampo Ranta coming in, and Jean-Luc Foodie, who is just 18 years old. But he held his own. He wasn't afraid to go up against some of those big guys, and he's only 5'10", 5'11", something like that. But he plays a physical game, and he's got some speed, so it's exciting. And to think about, I think his projection is probably a 2C, a second line center, and I think that's very exciting for the Avalanche when you have your first line is going to stay intact for quite some time. So that's set up, and then you start to think about in the future you have the second line of the stud Alex Newhook will be probably 21 by the time he debuts in the NHL, and is kind of like a Nathan MacKinnon Jr. with maybe not as fast, but he's got the same kind of hands, and to learn under a Nathan MacKinnon as an impressionable young kid is that's going to be beneficial to everybody. So I'm excited. I'm excited to see what he does for the rest of the year here with the Eagles.
It's I don't want to jump the gun, but as soon as you said learn under Nathan MacKinnon, I just thought to myself, who's another, wonderkin that learned under, kind of learned under a legend. And, granted, I'm not calling him Sidney Crosby, but Mario Lemieux and Sidney Crosby. I mean, Sidney Crosby lived with Mario Lemieux, for crying out loud. So it's like, yeah, just the thought of Nathan MacKinnon being a mentor is kind of mind blowing to me, because yeah, he has been in the league that long. And anyway, yeah, sorry, I'm going off a sidetrack there, but
yeah, I think they live like pretty close to each other. Like they grew up pretty close to each other. I don't know, something like that. And I think like MacKinnon said that they've trained together before, like in the past, before he was even a member of the Avalanche. So
okay,
Nathan MacKinnon, he trains with Sidney Crosby every offseason. They live in the same hometown.
Yeah.
So to think about the offseason training potentially being Sidney Crosby, Nathan MacKinnon, and Alex Newhook, I mean, there's no better coaching than that. So again, very, very excited to see. I think this kid's ceiling is very, very high, and I'm excited to see what he can do. He's a confident kid, and he's probably a little bit ahead of where most prospects are, and that's why he's immediately the number one top forward prospect for the Avalanche. Usurped Shane Bowers by a lot, usurped Martin Kaut by quite a bit, and he'll be the next guy in. So it's exciting times as the to be a fan of the Avalanche.
Yeah, and the Eagles too. I mean, to have all these guys, like you mentioned, I almost called him Santa Rambo, because that's what a lot of people on social media call him, Santa Rambo. Rampo Santa, Sampo Ranta.
I was like, now you got me all like tongue tied. I don't know that yet.
I know. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Sampo Ranta. Gosh, yeah. Screwing that up in my head. There it is.
And he looks great too. Like he's very impressive.
Yeah. We will talk more about that later, but real quick, I know this was your first game. I know you've been covering some Avs games, but to be in the Budweiser Event Center, this 5,000 for hockey, 7,000 for anything else, but this big cavernous, well, not even big, but cavernous arena there, but not as cavernous as Ball Arena. That's not the right word. To be in that arena and it's empty and it's smaller than Ball Arena, the crowd noise, the pumped in crowd noise. What did you think of that?
Dude, I'm glad you brought that up because it's
Mhm.
loud as shit. Like it is
Right?
fucking like. So yeah, I've been to a few Avs games covering them obviously, and it's not great. Maybe it's like it's just a larger space, but I think they turn it down a little bit at Ball Arena. And it kind of just sounds like a light gust of wind, like in the distance, is what I equate it to. But wow, I mean, they're cranking it at Budweiser Event Center. Like at times, it was just like it catches you off guard, and like they'll miss a shot or something, or hit the post, and like they'll turn on like that crowd noise, like and it's like
Oh,
booming. It's like, yeah,
yeah.
it's almost like a bit of a distraction. Like I think it's a little bit too much. Like it's exciting, because that I mean that's like I'm not even gonna say it's like what it sounds like when it's a packed, sold out crowd, because that's not like that's louder than I think it needs to be.
Mhm.
But it's got to be exciting, like for the players, I'm sure, to at least feel it, and they're young kids, and young kids generally like to blast their music in their headphones, and they like it loud, they like to get amped up, so maybe they like it, but I think it was a touch too much maybe, and we could turn it down just a couple decibels. Like they're probably on 11. Like let's go with like a 9.5.
Sure.
I think
Yep.
that's fair.
Yeah. It is pretty jarring and pretty rattling for sure. I definitely, yeah, a few times caught off guard. Um, not quite startled, but caught off guard, I think is a good way to put it, like you said. So,
Yeah.
well, we talked about Newhook's debut for the Eagles. We'll circle back around to the AHL affiliate of the Colorado Avalanche, but let's talk Avs. Okay, so we'll get to the positive COVID test of Phillip Grubauer here in a second, but the Avs, we did talk about the NHL trade deadline, and we're like, well, what are the Avs going to do? Are they going to stand pat on their position skaters, and are they gonna just pick up a backup goaltender? Well, they made 3 trades in 3 days. April 9th, bringing back Nemo, Patrick Nemeth from Detroit, sending a 4th round pick in 2022 to the Motor City for Patrick Nemeth, defenseman. April 10th, bringing in Devin Dubnyk. Dub and Grub connection. Not tonight, but the Dub and Grub and Dub connection. Bringing him in from San Jose, longtime Minnesota Wild goaltender. A lot of mixed feelings out there on social media about Devin Dubnyk coming into the Avalanche organization.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he's the backup, and now he's the starter this evening. And they sent Greg Patterin and a 2021 fifth rounder over to the Sharks to bring Devin Dubnyk into the organization. Last but not least, Josh Dickinson, part of the Eagles and Utah Grizzlies, back and forth between them for 3 years. Last year of his ELC in the Avalanche organization, they sent him and the signing rights of Ryder Rolston over to the Chicago Blackhawks, and they brought back big old Carl Soderberg, bringing back Soda, getting the band back together before
Yeah,
this
man. Seriously.
postseason push. Yeah, I saw that a lot on social media too. We're bringing the band back together.
Yeah.
So bringing back a couple of stalwarts in Nemeth and Soderberg, and bringing in Devin Dubnyk. What would you give Trader Joe, general manager Joe Sakic? What grade would you give him after the trade deadline?
I like it. He's never a guy that's gonna. He tries. He does try to make the big blockbuster trades, and he admitted after his post game, or not post game, I guess it was a pregame media availability on Monday after the trade deadline ended, just kind of meeting with the media, going over his expectations and talking about the trades and his thought process, and normally he doesn't really give us much as far as who he was going for, but he kind of told us, he's like, yeah, there was a much bigger trade in the works, which I would assume, I think Data reported that he heard that I think Nick Foligno was like one of the top 3 options for the Avalanche, and
Oh, damn.
or I think it was down to like 3 teams, and the Avalanche were one of them, and didn't end up working. And the other rumor is like Taylor Hall. He's been kicking the tires on Taylor Hall for a few years now, and
Right.
he ended up going pretty cheap to Boston. So it just didn't end up working out for whatever reason. That's what he said. But I like the moves he brought in, and apparently he's a big character guy. He's a big locker room guy, and he said that was kind of his thought process behind some of these. Like he knew like going into it that he wanted Patrick Nemeth back. He wanted like a big physical defenseman who can eat a lot of minutes, especially with Eric Johnson being out, which he confirmed during that same press conference that probably for the season. They said regular season, but they're like, we're not expecting him back, for the playoffs at all. And then also confirmed on that note that Francouz is out for for the year, and he got the same surgery as Simeon Varlamov did in 2017, which I think is like a double hip surgery which stems from like a groin injury or something like that. So that's like a 5 to 6 month recovery. So they decided just to pull the trigger on that one now, and hopefully he comes back well rested. But I like it. So yeah, he went in. Obviously, he said his plan was to always get 2 goalies. So when we were all freaking out about Jonas Johansson, a few weeks ago, and he made that trade, like this can't be what Joe Sakic's going to do. This is a stupid trade. Like there's no way this is going to be the backup heading into the postseason. He's like, yeah, I know. Like that was my plan, was to get 3 goalies, because as you guys know, like it took 3 goalies like in last year's playoffs, and you can never have too much depth. And like he preaches that. So he knew he was going to go after a second goalie. So he said like Patrick Nemeth was on his like radar. He was going to get him no matter what. And he said he wanted a Devin Dubnyk, which means, there was probably other goalie options, but they ended up settling for Devin Dubnyk, which is, he should be a serviceable backup, but
absolutely,
we'll talk about it a little bit. He's, going to be the bona fide de facto starter here for the next couple of weeks, but, so we'll see how that goes. And then, yeah, he mentioned that, he was going after some bigger forwards. Like he wanted some depth there. Didn't end up materializing. So they kind of, went back to Soderberg as a fallback option, because, the team loves him. And same with Patrick Nemeth. He said he gels really well with the team. They have great chemistry. They've done great things with like your organization. So, they know the systems. It's a perfect time for them to come in with, 3 weeks left in the season. They know everything about the team. They know like how we play. Nothing changes. So they should be able to step right in and, kind of, help out right away. So I like it. It's not sexy. It's not exciting. There's no Taylor Hall in the burgundy and blue. There's no Nick Foligno, but he's a smart guy, and he still managed to hold on to his assets. Like traded 2 late round picks, in the next couple of years, which is nothing. Greg Pattern was never going to be on this team long term. He got these guys for a steal, and again, they're not the sexy picks. They're like not the most attractive, but there's the familiarity there, and there's the connection, and they get their job done. They put their nose to the grindstone, and they get after it. And I think that's what we need, in the postseason. And Nemeth plays physical. That's probably my biggest complaint is they never go after like, they're not a very physical team, and we've talked about it quite a few times. In almost every single podcast, it seems like. But when the postseason starts, like you need to have those physical guys, because the play is elevated. The physicality is, elevated tenfold in the playoffs, because, you're competing for the Stanley Cup, and, people want to kill each other, and that's, they'll do whatever they have to do to win that thing. So I like, that they got Nemeth back. He's a very physical defenseman, doesn't take shit in front of the net, and, goes hard in the corners to get those pucks. And then same with, Carl Soderberg. He's got size, and he'll be great on that, third line probably, I think is where he's going to slot in. And he plays a physical brand of game too, and he's hard to knock off the puck. So as far as, I like all the moves. I'd give it a solid B+, I think. And I think that's a pretty fair grade. And, at the end of the day, I think the Avalanche got better after the trade deadline than, they're a better team now by making those trades than they were a week ago. So that's all you can really ask for, during the trade deadline. Again, it's not exciting. There's not, they're not going to be selling jerseys of, any of the guys they drafted. And he also kind of confirmed that none of them are going to be on the team next year, probably. It's just kind of like a short-term rental thing to go get the Stanley Cup. But it's serviceable, and that's all you can really ask for. And I like it at the end of the day.
Yeah. And, going back to last episode, I don't want to say I told you so, but because we weren't having that kind of conversation. So it wasn't really an I told you so situation. It was just when we were asking the feed, and somebody brought up the goaltending situation. It's like, I can totally see Joe Sakic going out and getting another goaltender, because Jonas Johansson can be the taxi squad guy for the time being. And you've got Miska and Warner down in Colorado switching and going back and forth like they did last season. And that's exactly what happened, because the Eagles have been having to pull guys from the Utah Grizzlies all year long, whether it's Parker Gahagan or Kevin Carr. It's like they've had to pull those goaltenders, and they haven't had real stability in net in regards to who's the starting guy. And of course, Peyton Jones is in the mix too. I forgot about him. How could I forget about him? But yeah, so yeah, to have Jonas Johansson as your taxi squad guy, and to have, Peyton Jones be, the number 3 guy, I think he's currently down with Utah, or maybe he's still on the Eagles roster. I haven't checked recently, but yeah,
I think it's Warner and Miska. Sorry, is that what
well, it is
were talking
Warner
about?
and it is Warner and Miska, but I want to say the Eagles have a third goaltender.
Do they?
I think they might have Peyton Jones there on
I
the
mean, they got a
roster.
bunch of goalies, so I don't know where they're all going, but
Some of them are playing in Utah, some of them are roaming the earth. So yeah, Peyton Jones is with the Grizzlies. So yeah, and which I kind of figured he would eventually bump down to play with Utah eventually this season. But yeah, no, when it comes to bringing in Nemeth and Soderberg, two guys that are very familiar with the Avalanche system, yeah, it's solid acquisitions, not sexy, not the Nick Folinos or the Taylor Halls, although every team Taylor Hall seems to go to doesn't do extremely well. So you
yeah.
wonder.
I mean, he's gone to like some pretty bad teams, though. Is the thing.
That's
Like,
true.
I'll never understand why he decided to sign with Buffalo. Like,
Yeah.
that's if he truly wanted to win, which is what he said. He's like, at this point in my career, I just care about like winning. I'm starting to get the sun is setting a little bit, and like I need to like go chase this cup. So a lot of people thought he's going to go to the Avalanche, but ended up signing with Buffalo for like not that much money. And then
Right.
before that he was with Arizona, which we know what happens there. And then I think Boston, they're set up for success. So I think it's going to be a good fit. And the funny thing is, like back in I think it was the 2011 NHL draft, like where's the Taylor versus Taylor Hall and Tyler Seguin debate.
Right.
And then I guess Edmonton ended up taking him, and then Boston got Tyler Seguin. But he ends up with Boston anyway. So that's fun. So we'll see what he can do there. And some I guess 10 years later, almost like exactly the date. But yeah, I hope he does well, because the poor guy just gets tossed around, and it can't be easy just like not finding a home for more than 6 months. And I think he'll do pretty well up there, and I'm glad he's out east and not out west. So
yes, I agree. Yeah, when I saw the NHL's Instagram post on Taylor Hall, and it's like, hey, he got drafted by the Oilers, and he's the fresh-faced young kid, and then he goes to Jersey, then he goes to Arizona, then he goes to Buffalo, now he's with Boston. It's like, holy crow, he's moved around quite a bit the past few years. It's like, yeah, it's crazy to me. But anyway, let's stop talking about Taylor Hall and start talking about Colorado hockey again. Yeah. So the Avalanche this past week, Friday, April 9th, 2-0 shutout against Anaheim. Sunday, April 11th, 4-1 win over the Ducks. Monday, April 12th, a weird ass 4-2 victory over Arizona. Almost let the Coyotes back in that game. Speaking of the Coyotes from our discussion. And then tonight, Wednesday, April 14th, at St. Louis. Game has started. It was a 5:30 p.m. Mountain start time, and it's 5:47 as we're recording this. So the game is underway in St. Louis, and let's talk about that a little bit. I mean, there was a positive COVID test for the St. Louis Blues, and obviously for the Colorado Avalanche as well. So Phillip Grubauer out with a positive test. Could be a false positive. The Avs have had a couple of those this past season, but I mean, should this game have even taken? I mean, Donskoy, you mentioned him being out with symptoms from being vaccinated. Adrian Dater, your cohort there at Colorado Hockey Now, broke the news that the whole team had been vaccinated, and Donskoy is having some adverse effects of it. And I mean, that's a lot. That's a lot to put on your plate right there to set the table. But I mean, Scott, your thoughts on all that, man?
Well, to be honest with you, I think it's incredibly irresponsible to continue with this kind of game. And I guess just going back to Dater broke the team got all vaccinated all at the same time, it seems. And one, you got to think, like, I got vaccinated yesterday as well, actually, and I feel like shit. Like, it is I couldn't imagine playing hockey, and like, I mean, for one, my shoulder is in a lot of pain, and it hurts to lift like above parallel. So I mean, there's that, and I imagine like getting hit against the boards multiple times a game, or even like raising your arms to take a shot or something is painful. So I feel bad for those guys, and I'm sure they're probably injected with some other stuff that's not vaccine, just to get through this game. But I feel run down and like fatigued and tired, and you have your starting goalie, Phillip Grubauer, test positive. So, the second guy in the last like week or so. St. Louis Blues, like you said, have tested positive as well. And, it's the same shit that happened with, the Minnesota Wild, and it got both teams shut down for, close to 2 weeks when there was a couple positive tests in Minnesota. They decided to let the game play, and, everyone's rubbing shoulders and breathing in each other's faces. And it's like, yeah, no shit, like more people are going to get it. So I hope that's not the case, but we are seeing, an uptick in players not feeling well and players testing positive. And, this is not the time to do that when we're down to like the last 2 or 3 weeks here. And, it would be devastating to kind of shut things down. And we saw what happened. You mentioned it at the top of the podcast with Vancouver, and, right. I forgot which player it was, but, he was very outspoken about it today.
JT Miller.
And he's like, I don't want to play. Like, I don't feel ready at all. Like, this is like, it's kind of BS that, we have to do this. And at the end of the day, it's like, it's about player safety. And, the NHL preaches nonstop that it's, that's our priority is, player safety and like all that kind of stuff. But it's white noise. Like, they care about business. That's kind of just the simple fact of the matter. And, they're gonna play the game as long as they can get away with it. And I think that's what they're doing right now. And you just hope, in the next like week or so, we don't see more people, more St. Louis Blues or more Avalanche that are on this, positive COVID list. But I wouldn't be surprised if it happens. And that's just, the situation. And it'd be devastating at this point in the season to, have some of these guys not be able to play. And, the Avs are going to make the playoffs. So I'm not worried about that. So, say knock on wood and Nathan McKinnon or any of your top line guys or Cale Makar, any of these guys, like, end up having to sit for 2 weeks per the COVID protocol. It wouldn't be like, devastating in the standings, but, hopefully they're asymptomatic and it's not a big deal. But, your lungs are gassed. Like, yeah. if you do have the actual, you have the symptoms of COVID, like it's, and some of these guys will inevitably have that. It's going to take, a month or so to get your lungs back under you. And, you're going to have to rest up and just hope that's not the case. But yeah, I think it's a little irresponsible. And I'm sure the NHL is probably feeling the pressure too, that, we're getting down to the wire here. There's a lot of games we have to fit in before the playoffs start. And I think they're probably feeling the pressure themselves and maybe not making the most rational decision here, but let's just hope it ends up being okay. And that's all we can really hope for. But until, we'll have to wait however long the incubation period is or whatever for someone to get, exposed. So the next 3 to 7 days, we'll see how many more people end up on the list. And, hopefully that number is 0, but we'll see.
And, the AHL, I mean, obviously that's my main beat is the AHL at large. And man, they've had to shuffle games and postpone games. And, they're probably going to have to end up straight up canceling games, especially if they don't have any kind of postseason, which I know a couple divisions, like I mentioned before, are trying to get done in the AHL. But it's like you have the scheduling aspect of it, which, it's a bit of a cluster in that regard. But you also have the individual aspect of it. Like you said, Scott, and you have these players that come down with the COVID-19 virus. And yeah, there's going to be side effects and there's going to be adverse side effects in that what you just said. Players are gassed. Players are not going to be able to play up to the same ability that they did before they got COVID-19. And so I know that it's a different sport and it's quite it's actually an individual that Broncos country is very familiar with. And it's Cam Newton. It reminds me of Cam Newton during the football season when, playing for the New England Patriots, he got COVID-19 and he came back and he wasn't the same player, and the only reason I know that is because he was on my fantasy football team, but I digress.
Same. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like Cam Newton wasn't the same when he came back from that, and he didn't, and granted, he, at this point in his career, he's on the downslope of his career and everything, but his production level wasn't the same as it was when he was healthy and didn't have COVID-19. So if a caliber of an athlete of Cam Newton's ability, they're all high caliber athletes. I mean, you can't be a hockey player and not be a professional at the NHL level. So yeah, to have, multiple cases, it's like, yeah, these players are going to be gassed. They're going to be, X, Y, and Z. But then last, but definitely not least, I should have said this foremost, but, Yeah, just the general health of the team. You know, I saw a lot on social media today. It's like, well, where's the NHLPA during all this? Why aren't they speaking up for the players? Well, you know, in Vancouver, in St. Louis, like, where are they? Like, why haven't they made a statement in regards to, hey, we're not going to play in these adverse conditions? You know, we've got our members coming down with COVID-19, and you're putting them in a spot where, you know, you have these contact tracers and things like that. It's like, I, yeah, it's frustrating to see, you know, the lack of, I don't know, the lack of abundance of caution. You always hear that
Yeah,
term
that's
get thrown
that's definitely
around, but
the go-to term. But
yeah,
yeah, and, again, I think it's just like a lot of different parties are feeling pressure. Whether it's the NHL or the NHLPA or the teams. Like, I think at the end of the day, the teams want to play. Like that's unless like it's just half their teams out or whatever it is. Like I think all they really care about is getting this thing done, and that's all the NHL cares about. And I'm sure the NHLPA is probably it's made up of a board member of NHL players. So I'm sure they're going to their respective teams and be like, "Do you guys want to play? Like, what's the deal?" And I'm sure they're probably all on the same page in that regard. That I think the NHL and the NHLPA, the players, the teams, they all want to play. Regardless of if someone gets tests positive or even like two people on the team test positive. But I just think it's a bad decision. It's like, how much damage are we doing if sure you got another game down, you're playing the Blues or whatever, but let's say a couple days from now, like half the roster comes down with it. And then what? It's like now you have to shut things down for, a while versus just canceling one game or trying to move one game. So
right.
yeah, we'll see what happens. It's an interesting situation. Definitely something to keep your eye out on. And, we've kind of dodged this for a while as far as the Avalanche are concerned. After
Sure.
I don't think there's been a case since I mentioned the Minnesota Wild and Avalanche outbreak when they both had to shut things down for 10 or 14 days, whatever it was. So yeah, I mean it's definitely something to keep your eye out on. They've done a good job so far keeping those cases down, but it's never a good feeling when there's like two players in the same week, on the same team kind of get it, and then
Right.
you're playing a team that has positive cases. And it's I just hope it's not an Avalanche Minnesota Wild 2.0 kind of situation where they decide to play the game anyway, and everyone gets it. So
Mm-hmm.
we'll see.
Yeah. Yep. And hopefully the Avs players being vaccinated is a good step, even though, like you said, the whole team feeling like shit doesn't do anybody good, but we'll go from there. Let's transition from the Avalanche to the Eagles again. Since we talked about Alex Newhook, we're doubling back to the Eagles now. We'll talk about them as a whole. So they hosted Texas for 4 games in 6 days. Earlier in the season, they played down in Cedar Park 4 games in 6 days. So their 8-game set against the Texas Stars is now complete for the 2021 season. 6 out of 8 of those games were Eagles victories. So they took 3 of 4 in this homestand against the Stars. 5-4 loss. 5-4 victory on Tuesday, the 6th. Had to look at my Peanuts calendar.
As you do.
As I do. Tuesday the 6th, it was a 5-4 victory against the Stars. Watched the Wednesday game, real close, 1-1 victory, 1-1 victory, 1-1 up to, through regulation is what I meant to say. Texas took it in the shootout, 2-1, and then the Eagles took the next 2 games, the Saturday and the Sunday. I was at the Saturday game, 3-0 shutout for Adam Werner, an 18-save shutout. Not a whole big workload for him. Actually, I think it was 16 saves. It was 16 or 18. I can't remember off the top of my head, but Werner gets his 3rd AHL shutout of his career. And the next game, 4-1 victory. And Wednesday night, I got to see the debut of Sampo Ranta, which, he was great on the back check. He was really good at finishing his checks. He wasn't scared to get into the dirty zones, get into the corners and lay the body on some guys. I was really impressed. Like you said, you were impressed with Ranta too, from what you saw with him. And yeah, so I say, with all that, I'm not going to break it down as much as I have in the past on Front Range Hockey here. But I did want to talk about the Josh Dickinson being jettisoned off in his 3rd and final year of his ELC after three seasons between the Grizzlies and the Eagles. And with Newhook signing, with Ronta signing, when you have guys like Jean-Luc Foodie and Luca Berzan that signed ATOs and are still with the Eagles, it's like you're spoiled for riches, and it made Dickinson expendable. And so that's why he could be included in that, Chicago Blackhawks trade that brought Soderberg back.
Yeah. Again, it's like you said, like the wealth of riches or whatever. Like it's, it's like we're not really losing too much, in the trade deadline these days, because they're just, everyone's so expendable. Like you look at your top three, like Josh Dickinson was never going to be an NHL player. That's, just the reality of the situation. And especially when you're drafting guys like Alex Newhook, you got Martin Kaut, Shane Bowers, like,
yep.
He's probably, 10th on the depth chart as far as forwards are concerned. And was probably never going to get a call up, never. He was destined to be kind of a Colorado Eagle, fringe player for his career. So, the fact that you give him up it's not too much of a loss. I know a lot of people liked his game, and I thought he was solid, very serviceable at the AHL level, and, great at the ECHL level. But, it is what it is. And, I don't necessarily think it was going to miss him too much, but that's you got to do what you got to do these days.
You do. And also the signing rights for Ralston as well. I mean, you've got prospects pouring out your ears, and when you draft well, you can afford to do this. And I know Kaut's name has been floated on the trade market for a long time, but if you can keep Martin Kaut, why not? I mean, don't send him off somewhere unless you have to. And the Avs definitely have the benefit of the choice not to, because of how deep their forward core is at the NHL and the AHL level for sure. So yeah, guy I mentioned, Jean-Luc Foodie, we did talk about him a little bit. You mentioned him unprovoked. I made the Nathan MacKinnon, like very light shades of Nathan MacKinnon, a number of episodes ago, and that kind of took you back a little bit. You're like, hey now. And so
chill out, man.
Chill out. You've seen him in person, and you so perfectly put it that he is the Kroger brand Nathan MacKinnon. And you're like, and that's not a knock, because you like Kroger brand.
Yeah.
So
big King Supers guy, big Kroger brand guy. So yeah, it's not a knock at all. If anything, it's a compliment actually. But yeah, man, you were spot on. He's a poor man's Nathan MacKinnon. I see, some flashes of that and some flashes of brilliance here and there. And it was my first time, really seeing him in person and seeing what he's capable of. But it's like, this kid is 18 years old. He was the youngest guy by far on the Eagles, and the youngest guy on the ice, against Bakersfield on Tuesday night. And he's damn quick. Like he's fast. He's fast with his hands. Like, he's putting up points, and he just seems like a very, very confident player. And I was thoroughly impressed. And, actually I asked Cronin about it, after the game, just because I told him, I was like, this is like the only exposure I've really had of him. Like, what's your thought on this guy? Like as an 18-year-old kid, like, how impressive he's been for you for the, through 20 games or whatever it is. And, he told me that, he's confident that like Foodie is a guy that you're going to hear about like in the very near future, and you're going to continue to hear about, so we'll see what happens next year. Obviously, like the OHL season scrapped, I think, at this point.
It is.
So he'll finish out the year at the AHL level, but he has to continue playing, and his rights are retained by his OHL team until he's 20 years old. So with that said, he's going to have to go back to the OHL next year, or make the Avalanche roster outright at a training camp, which is just not going to happen. So it sucks that he's going to have to take a step back and go back to the OHL next year. But the exposure he got at the professional level, and I think his development just got ramped up, by a couple points by playing as an 18-year-old in the AHL and doing really, really well. It's awesome. And he could be what a lot of people consider like the steal of the draft. Like, he's a third rounder. It's not too crazy to call him like a steal. He's not that big of a steal, but again, the rich keep getting richer. It's like the Joe Sakic's, it's like his scout team, and that front office, they know what they're doing, and they find these diamonds in the rough, and it's insane. Some of these guys they're getting, and just this pipeline is just so stocked, and it's going to be one of those things like it's a good problem to have, because now you can leverage those assets to, make trades down the road to, eventually acquire a Taylor Hall kind of guy maybe next year, or something like that. But, at some point you're gonna have to say bye to some of these players, because there's just so many of them, and they're all great, which is, unfortunate. But I was, very, very impressed with Jean-Luc Foodie, and, he's a guy I'm excited to check. Like, obviously he's not going to make the team next year, and, people might forget about him when he's back in the OHL, but he's definitely a guy I'm going to be keeping my eye out on for, when he does go back to the OHL, to see if he kind of maintains that, whatever he's doing right now, which is great.
Mhm.
And then, I think, maybe when he turns 20, like he'll definitely be back in the AHL, and, with all this experience he's gotten this year at the AHL, like he could be a guy that could make the team when he's 20 years old, and we'll see. I mean, it's again, exciting times, like especially for the Eagles right now. Like, they are just stocked with, all of the Avalanche's, top forward prospects are all playing in Loveland right now. And,
Yep.
if you don't, I tipped a lot of people off to the AHL TV deal. Because a lot of people, when Newhook made his debut, like, how do I watch these games? It's like AHL TV. It's only $20 for the rest of the season, for a team. And it's like discounted right now. It's like, it's totally worth the investment for $20. There's 13 games left. And like, you're looking, if you're truly an Avalanche fan and you truly care about, what's coming up, as far as the prospects and what this team's going to look like in the near future, like, buy that AHL TV pass and check out the Jean-Luc Foodies and, Alex Newhook, Shane Bowers, Martin Kaut, and, do yourself a favor and check some of these guys out, because it's impressive what they're doing down there in Loveland. And it's just, trickles up to how impressive they're going to be, at the NHL level. And it's an exciting time to be a Colorado Avalanche fan. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of the Avs, I want to show you something here. Broop. You got to score. You got to score. Avs. Yep.
All right. It's been a while since that fourth line cashed in.
There you go. So thanks, Durpsuki, for the little score update there. 1-0 Avalanche as Belmar. Belmar? That's a neighborhood in Denver. It is.
And I'm not quite spelled the same way, but
yeah. It's not. No, but he fits right in. So there you go. Now real quick, we'll move this along so Scott can watch the game live. To wrap up the Eagles game that you saw last night, any other notable things that you observed watching this game from the Eagles' point of? I mean, they lost 6-2. I mean, Bako, they have that. I mean, like you said, they're an old team, but they have that ability, like the Henderson Silver Knights, to, just take it to you. So, I mean, Henderson and Bakersfield, two of the best teams in the Pacific Division. But yeah, Bako, 6-2 victory over the Eagles. What was one of your major takeaways from that game last night?
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I wasn't really paying, too much attention to anyone. Like I was telling you, earlier, I was just like, had the camera out, just trying to get footage of Alex Newhook as much as I could. But
makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, to the point I made just a second ago about how stacked this Eagles team is with the top forward prospects for the Avalanche. You'd think they'd be potting goals left and right, especially the TJ Tynans and those guys they already currently have, and injecting Alex Newhook into the lineup, Sample Ranta, I guess I forgot to mention him. You'd think they'd be a little bit better, but it seems they're still kind of struggling with the systems a little bit, and they blew it last night. I think they kept it. I think they scored the first goal of the game, and then Bakersfield got two quick ones to go up 2-1 in the first, and I think the Eagles ended up tying it in the third. And then they just, let off like 4 unanswered goals or something like that, to just kind of like, the wheels fell off there in the third period. And yeah, it's interesting. I will say, when I was doing some stat digging, after the game, they lost it or whatever. But ever since Brett Clark, and we've talked about this, I think the last podcast or the last couple podcasts about since Brett Clark took over, I think he's doing the special teams as well. The power play's top 10 in the league right now after being in the basement for the entire season. I don't think they scored yesterday. But at one point on that note, actually, Alex Newhook is playing on the first unit power play, which is great. And at one point, I think in the third period, they had a power play, and it was Alex Newhook, Shane Bowers, and Martin Kaut all in a line. And if that doesn't get you like all, giddy and excited, I don't know what will, because that's pretty awesome. I think that's what everyone was hoping for. And they did it for 40 seconds or whatever it was. They didn't score, but again, exciting times to be watching the Eagles games for sure. But yeah, I couldn't tell you really what the issue is with the Eagles. Not really sure. I can't really comment on it. I haven't seen like too many games, but if yesterday's or last night's game was any indication, it's like, yeah, maybe the defense needs a little help. They're, to be fair, Jacob McDonald and Connor Timmons got called up, Dan Renouf, all these guys are not
Kiefer
playing for the
Sherwood.
Eagles. Yeah.
I mean, not defense, but yeah.
Right. I guess, yeah, he was missing in action too. So yeah, I mean, it's tough. I think that's probably what the deal is. The Avalanche have taken a lot of defensemen from the Eagles throughout, various times in the season, and they're playing on the taxi squad as well. So I think the defense needs, some help for sure, and I think that's kind of where they're struggling mostly. But if they're not really fighting for a playoff position, there's not going to be a playoffs. So it's kind of just about developing some of those young guys. And I know if you're an Eagles fan, you don't want to hear that like they're losing games, but really like the Avs don't really care, to be honest with you. Like that's not really what the situation is for them. It's kind of about getting the Alex Newhooks and the Sampo Rantas and all those guys as much playing time as possible in this season where playoffs don't matter because there won't be playoffs. So
right. Yeah. I mean, it's all about development this year. I was on the horn with the VP of Business Ops for the Hartford Wolfpack today because I was trying to get a photography credential for one of our full press hockey staff members, and yeah, he's like, should we have played this season? Maybe not, but it was about development, and it was about these guys being able to skate and to develop. So on the East Coast, Mountain States, doesn't matter. It's all the same. Development needs to happen. So speaking of development, go ahead.
I was going to say, it's really like the NHL's call. Like, like whatever their partner club is, it's, they get to decide. And Cronin's, told us quite a bit about that. We're just like, I don't determine the playing time of my players. Like it's, they tell me I want, Martin Kaut, Alex Newhook, all these guys on the power play. I want them playing, 20 minutes a game. I have to do it. I have to abide by it because it's a developmental league. They don't really care about winning. Winning is kind of just like it takes a back seat. If they win, that's great. But It's really just about like we could lose, 8-0, but as long as Alex Newhook played 22 minutes, you're doing your job well, Cronin. Like, so it is unfortunate. It's weird to be a fan of an AHL, hockey team for that reason, because it's such a revolving door. And, also there's not really an onus on winning games. That's not really the priority, but it's, especially in this short season, it's like, it's okay to kind of suck this year because there is no playoffs. You're not playing for the Calder Cup. And just, get some of these guys, I guess, accelerate their development a little bit, give them a lot of minutes, and hopefully see them in the NHL next year.
There you go. Colorado Eagles hockey. Last but not least, I'll just chime in real quick. We talked about Trent Minor starting his Vancouver Giants season off very hot with 3 shutouts in a row. I don't want to say he's come back down to earth a little bit because he's still gone 1-2 and his numbers are still very impressive. I mean, 4-2-0, 1.42 goals against average, 0.937 save percentage. Only 8 goals allowed in those 3 games since his first 3 were 3 shutouts. So not too shabby. I mean, he's still doing pretty well. I mean, obviously when you start the season off with 3 shutouts, you're going to come back down to earth a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, we did expect him to have a shutout for the rest of his, season. Like that's just not possible. I don't think that's ever been done. But yeah, still, pretty solid stats, but like you said, yeah, definitely coming back down to earth. But another thing to, keep your eye out on, like Trent Minor has looked great, at the AHL level, looked pretty solid. And, now he's gone back to the WHL, an improved player, and we're starting to see that he's playing really well.
Yeah. That's it for the Colorado Eagles. We'll go through the collegiate, just kind of wrap up real quick. We just have, big news out of Colorado Springs, formally introducing former Michigan assistant coach Chris Mayotte as their new head coach on Monday, April 12th. So the Chris Mayotte era and the Robson Arena era, that new spiffy arena on Colorado College's campus, will coincide and will launch in the fall of 2021. So, he had 2 seasons with Michigan, but he also had 5 seasons with Providence before that. And Providence did win the NCAA championship while he was with the team. he will help the Tigers usher in that new era. So just wanted to touch on that real quick. We'll talk alumni news before we get to asking with the feed. Definitely giving it its due. Just kind of rushing to our final segment so that we don't keep Scott here too long and keep.
No, you're good. I think it's intermission anyway, so it's about to be. So we got 20 minutes.
Sure. Well, trying to keep it around an hour still.
That's fair. Yeah.
The Colorado pipeline for the Chicago Blackhawks and Rockford Ice Hogs organization. We've talked about it before. Colorado College's alum Chris Wilkie, 15 games played, 6 goals and 5 assists. I want to say he's 4th on the Ice Hogs in scoring this year. Josiah Slavin, 4 games played, 3 goals and 2 assists for Rockford this season. So the CC guys showing out a little bit for the Ice Hogs. And Ian Mitchell, you mentioned him, DU alum Ian Mitchell, 32 games played for the Blackhawks, 2 goals, 2 assists. Now currently with the Rockford Ice Hogs, 5 games played, 1 assist. Other Colorado Collegiate alumni news. Zach Berzola mentioned that he signed a PTO with Hartford on March 23rd. Still has not seen AHL action, so we'll keep you posted on that. And the Air Force Academy's resident alumni that we keep bringing up, Billy Christopoulos, netminder Billy Christopoulos, finally got some AHL games in. 2 games played with Rochester, but guess what? I'm not going to talk about the stats because they were not good, Bob. Not good. I'm not even going to mention them. We're just going to say, okay, he played in 2 games for Rochester, and we're going to move on. So let's move on. Asking the feed. We're going to ask the feed first and foremost. Marie Sexton, at Marie Sexton on Twitter, writes for The Rink, Colorado. Let's see. She didn't really have a question. She just said, Shane Bowers. That's it. That's the question. But then she said, actually, well, and she elaborated on that. So I think there's this idea that first round picks should automatically be top of the call-up list, regardless of whether or not they've earned it. And of course, that leads to the question, has Shane Bowers earned it? Also, I think to some extent, leaving him in the AHL proves the coaches are invested in their development, whereas the taxi squad is often full of guys whose development doesn't really matter to the organization long-term. Sean, what are your thoughts on that real quick?
Scott.
Or Sean Scott.
It's like, damn, we almost made it through a full episode.
I've been so bad about that the past couple episodes.
That's all right. But actually, yeah, so I asked actually like Coach Cronin about that. I literally said, listen, I asked about Martin Kaut and I was like, let's talk about another first rounder that, Denver media and fans for sure are chomping at the bit, to know about and know if this guy's like NHL ready anytime soon. Like, haven't watched him like very many games. What are your observations on Shane Bowers and his development? And, I don't think like this guy's NHL ready. And like me and Marie, we agree on this front, and she always backs me up anytime like someone will attack me, like, why is Martin Kaut not called up? Or like, where's Shane Bowers at? Like, when like any sort of injury happens, and it's like, I mean, I'm putting him like way down low on the list. It's like, these guys aren't NHL ready. I don't really remember exactly what Coach Cronin said, but it's a slow roll. Like he's showed signs of improvement at times, but he goes through like too many slumps to really be, a consistent player. And like he started the season out strong. He said he looked great, but now he's kind of just like teetered off and has been very average. And consistency is key. It's kind of the same issue with Martin Kaut. He goes through his ups and downs, and he has for the last 3 years. And until you're consistently producing at the AHL level, and oh yeah, we're stockpiled, at the NHL level, we don't need you necessarily. So take your damn time. Like, let's finish out this year. We'll get you in training camp next year. We'll see if you earn a spot. If not, we'll keep sending you down. And, that's just how it works. Like the Avalanche can afford to not rush any of these guys. And I really don't think, and me and Marie, agree on this, that either of them are NHL ready. I really don't think so. I think Martin Kaut is getting close. I think he's probably next up. Shane Bowers, like I've covered him for a few years. I have not really seen anything that would indicate that he's a first round pick, to be honest with you, or is anywhere close to being NHL ready. And I know fans don't want to hear that, but it is just my opinion at the end of the day. Don't attack me. But I've seen, quite a few of his games, and I don't know. I don't know if it's there. And again, he's a very inconsistent player, and is not necessarily doesn't have the speed that would really match at the NHL level, or he's got good size, but I don't know if he really uses it to his advantage all that much, and I'm just not sure if it's there. And I think Cronin agrees with me too, or that's what he said last night, that he's just too inconsistent right now. I don't know if he's NHL ready. He's taken some time, and the Avalanche at the end of the day can afford to take their time with him. So not a big deal, not a big rush, but yeah, I wouldn't expect him to. I'm not expecting to see him in the NHL next year. Maybe he'll get a few games.
Sure. The comparison that Sean O'Brien, not Scott McDonald, but the comparison that Sean and I talked about a couple weeks ago on the Calder Farmstead, Capo Caco over in New York. He's playing garbage minutes for the Rangers right now, and they're not playing him in Hartford like first line minutes, which they should. If you want to develop a guy, it doesn't matter if you draft him in the first round. If you want to develop a guy and actually have him play pro time, put him down in the AHL. And hell, Hartford, I mean, you give a chance to have him play Bridgeport and Providence 12 times each. I mean, I don't know. It's just, yeah, this idea that you should play your first round guys in the NHL and that they're always going to be ready is not always the case.
It's almost never the case. Like, unless they're a top, and if they're a top 3 pick, maybe you can insert them in the lineup like right away and they earn a spot. But if you're anywhere outside of that, it takes time. Like, especially with, there is a large gap between, major juniors or like college and then the AHL and then the NHL, obviously. It's not just easy to kind of transition into that. It's completely different games across all platforms and across all leagues. And it takes some time to get to used to that. And the last thing you want to do is, rush the development of players. And, like I said earlier, Tyson Jost is, one of the guys that I think was rushed a little too quickly. And, it took him probably even more time than it should have to really develop. And now we're finally starting to see it, some 4 years later. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Sorry guys. Shane Bowers isn't ready. That's my opinion. It's Coach Cronin's opinion. And obviously it's the, Avalanche's opinion as well, or else he would be, on the team. So
there you go. Yeah. Thanks, Marie, for that. Not question, but topic for us to converse about.
Statement.
Like I told her, she's like, that's not really a question. It's just more me rambling, but it's like, well, correct, but at least we can talk about it. So we did. So thanks, Marie. We appreciate it. Durf Zuki, he's keeping us posted on the Avalanche game, and 1-1 didn't want to bring Scott down. Lol.
Thanks, Durf Zuki.
Yep. Durf keeping us posted. Speaking of which, let's take his question next. We did answer his Eagles portion of his question, but he said, speaking of the Avs, how do you like their chance to come out on top in their next 4 games against St. Louis, especially with their playoff hopes on the line? Real quick, I'll chime in on this one. I say they take 2, maybe 3, especially with Dubnyk in goal. Dubnyk, rather. Gotta say it right. Dub and Grub. Grub and Dub. So I say they take 2 or 3 games.
Yeah. As far as, I'm going to answer the first part of the question, which is which prospects from the Eagles you think were more poised to make the Avs. I mean, we just talked about how, Shane Bowers is not it, but
right.
I do think, Martin Kaut finally breaks through. There's a lot of open spots next year is the thing. So Logan O'Connor, for one, is on a 1-way contract next year. He's going to be your 4th line guy. Yep. Martin Kaut, I could see being, a 4th line center. I think they're projecting him as like a 3rd liner, but they'll probably start him on that 4th line. And he's really upped his game, his physicality quite a bit. That was another takeaway I had from just the first exposure I've really had of him, this season with the Eagles is, he's finishing all of his checks. He's playing, very, very physical. I don't know if the legs are necessarily there yet, but he's playing like a 3rd or 4th line center. And when I've talked to him in the past, he's told me that he wants to be like Matt Calvert, and the Avalanche have talked to him about that as well. And I've kind of told him that that's going to be his role. Like, you're a 3rd or 4th line guy. You're not going to be scoring 100 goals a year. You're not Alexander Ovechkin. You're not Nathan McKinnon. We need you to be just a depth guy. And he said, to be like that, I have to be like Matt Calvert. So I could see him on that note being, Matt Calvert's replacement. I think that might be it, honestly. Like, maybe like New Hook. I could see him being, inserted in there at some point. And we'll see. And obviously, like Connor Timmins too, if he can earn a role. But I'm not sure there's any spots really on the defense next year. But we shall see. And then, how do you like your chance to come out on top in the next 4 games against St. Louis? It's obviously 1-1 now. I think St. Louis is going to like be playing their guts out. It's going to be tough, and it's not at all helped by the fact that Phillip Grubauer is out for the next 2 weeks with COVID, and he's kind of been their lifeline at times, and has been their MVP. I think all throughout the season. I've said it multiple times. So it's going to be tougher for sure having Dubnyk back there, but the Avs have a great defense, so I think it'll be some close games. And if they can even win 2 out of those 4, I think they're right on pace, and they're not letting St. Louis gain any ground or anything. So I hope they get at least 2, but yeah, we'll see.
We'll say a soft 2 on that. But we transition from Durfzuki. Thanks for the question, bud. Always appreciate it. We have a couple, of course, of Seattle Kraken expansion. Yeah.
We're doing so good.
100 days until the Seattle Kraken's expansion draft. So
is that right? Is that actually?
That is right. That's correct.
Okay.
I saw that on the social media. Yes. So yeah, we have a couple questions, but actually I think this one got answered. Let me say the question and then an answer from another person out there in the Twitterverse. Gary the Great at Gary the Great 16 asks, isn't there a rule in the expansion draft that says if a player is injured all season, then the team might not need to protect him? So would that mean that the Avs might not need to protect Francouz or EJ? And then Peter Sakic at Montreal Fan Sakic, that's MTL Fan Sakic, he says no. Career-ending injury may be deemed exempt. Team can ask for an exemption, and an NHLPA, and the NHLPA has the final word. They can ask for a medical evaluation, and if the player has the chance to play again in the NHL, they can give an exemption or not. That's not automatic and only for career ending. Otherwise, I think a lot of people would be putting players on long-term IR or IR in general if that was the case.
Yeah, which is almost accurate. So yeah, okay. I think career-ending injuries they're exempt, or if they, I think they missed. So I don't know if the rule changed. It obviously had to have, but before it was if they missed more than 60 games the season before, then they are exempt as well. So obviously, with this being a 56 game season, I don't know if that changed at all. Kind of like they changed the entry level contract rule where they in a regular 82 game season they got 9 games or whatever. And I think this season they shortened it to like only 6 games. So I'm curious. I couldn't find anything on it, but I think in a regular 82 game season, if they miss more than 60 games, then they're deemed, exempt from expansion. But since there's only 56 games this year, I don't know if it's like if they miss 40 games or like something like that, or if they even changed it at all. So we'll see. I mean, I think they both can be exposed still. At this point, I think you want to be exposed. Like that's kind of, I guess we'll get into that in the next question here, but yeah, I mean, it's interesting. We'll see what happens. But yeah, I think they're still exposable. And either way, like Francouz is going to be the one exposed anyway. I think they're going to protect Grubauer. So,
of course. Yep.
And then, yeah, Eric Johnson, I think they're going to ask to waive his no trade clause anyway to expose him and hope Seattle takes him. Or if not, I mean, great. He's still an Avalanche, but I think he's definitely a buyout candidate anyway. I'm not expecting him to be on the roster next year. Sadly, it's not all his fault. He's a little overpaid for the way the cap space is working out for these next couple of years, and he's missing a lot of time. He's a very injury prone guy, and he's kind of, I think, lost the trust of the staff and for sure the fan base.
And when you have Cale Makar and Bowen Byram as the young guns and doing well and playing at the NHL level already, the writing's on the wall, unfortunately. So as we've talked about many, many episodes of Front Range Hockey. So last question, again, with the expansion draft in mind, Brandon Eccles B. Eccles, 2007. I was wondering if we have done an expansion breakdown. We have. Spoiler alert.
Few times.
A few times, but we always appreciate new listeners coming in and being zealous about the expansion draft because it's a big question for sure. Who will get the Avs? Who will the Avs likely protect and not protect? Seeing as how Joe said we have to get cheaper next season. Like you mentioned, you expose Francouz because you have to. You can only protect one goaltender. Eric Johnson, you have him waive his no trade clause. You work something out with Seattle if you have to in regards to that. And of course, that cap hit and everything. So other players, Scott, remind me again. You've only said it 4 or 5 times on the show, but I need a refresher.
Yeah, actually, I pulled it up this time because I saw this was coming. But yeah, as far as
that's right. You have a prepared statement.
Yeah, exactly.
I forget. You finally like, okay, forget this. We need a prepared statement.
Well, honestly, it's like it might have changed a little bit. So
okay.
I guess what was the question? Who do we think? So I guess I'll go with like who I think they're going to protect. Mm-hmm. So they have the 2 choices between selecting 7 forwards, 3 defensemen, and a goalie, or just taking any combination of 8 forwards and defensemen and a goalie. I think they're going to be forced to take the 8 option route. You're getting I guess 2 fewer players that way, but the Avalanche are just so stacked on defense that to me, obviously Cale Makar is getting protected. Devon Taves, Sam Girard, those are shoe-ins. And, I think Ryan Graves is, me and Dater have talked about this quite a bit. And I think beforehand I was like, he's definitely an exposable guy, but the way, his contract is structured, how cheap he is, and, the level of play that they're getting, I think if he was exposed, I think Seattle would 100% take him. And I don't think the Avalanche want that to happen. So right there is 4 defensemen. So you automatically have to do the 8 forwards and defenseman combination there. So there's 4 there. I'll get another easy one out of the way. Phillip Grubauer, he's going to get re-signed. Joe Sakic kind of indicated that was going to be the case as well in the offseason. So he's staying long-term with the Avs. So there's 5, and I guess we got 4 forwards left, and top line makes up 75% of that. So right. Mikko Rantanen, Nathan McKinnon, Gabe Landeskog, those guys are all going to be protected. Gabe's going to get re-signed. And then that 4th one is interesting because there's a lot of good players that you want to try to protect. And just like looking at this list, it's a tough call. Like, do you maybe take like a Andre Burakovsky or Nazem Kadri, or do you even maybe just Nichushkin, and hope they don't take him because the value you're getting out of Val Nichushkin and what he's offered to this 3rd line for the Avalanche this season, and how cheap he is of a contract, I think he's a very attractive option for a young Seattle team to take. And again, I don't think the Avalanche want that to happen. So it's tough. There's a lot of choices. Obviously, Tyson Jost is on there. That's going to be the popular. Everyone wants Tyson Jost to stay on the team. Well, I mean, a lot of people don't want him to stay on the team, but it's a very polarizing topic. But I would say for me, probably Andre Burakovsky would be the that 4th forward protected, and you're giving them a whole lot of options at that point. There's Brandon Saad, Donskoy, Kadri, JT Compher, Val Nichushkin, Tyson Jost. Those are all exposed guys, and I think it'll probably be a Jost or a Nichushkin that gets picked.
Sounds good. Yeah, I'm not going to chime in because I haven't done my research as much as Scott has on that, to update the list and everything like that. But yeah, 100 days away from the Seattle Kraken's expansion draft. So start the timer, count it down. We are getting near. I mean,
we'll probably have a full, maybe in the off season, could do a full hour-long podcast on that. And just really dive deep into it and talk about it. But I mean, it's
like we mentioned in a few episodes, who is the Avs player that ended up going to the Vegas Golden Knights in that expansion draft? Calvin Pickard.
Yeah.
Didn't play a game for Vegas. So
yeah, the Avs won that expansion draft, but I think this one, just with how deep this team is.
Oh yeah.
You're going to lose somebody good, and it's probably going to be any one of, if they decide not to, protect Ryan Graves, it'll probably be Ryan Graves. with the forwards, I think Tyson Jost will probably be the guy unless they protect him, but I don't think they will, and just kind of hope for the best. Or again, like I said, offer some draft picks, offer some, prospects, and retain maybe a little bit of the salary on Eric Johnson and try to work out a trade. Like, Vegas did that a couple times with various teams to just try to get them, like, we want to keep our good players, but like, we'll give you, this guy, a 3rd round pick, next year to take Eric Johnson, and we'll take half his salary. So that's, going to be an attractive option for Seattle. And I think that's probably going to be the most likely thing that happens. But, stay tuned. In 100 days, we'll find out.
Ron Francis, he's going to be wheeling and dealing in these next 100 days. You bet. So, all right. Well, this is officially the longest episode of Front Range Hockey that we've recorded. But hey, it's been quality stuff.
And there's a lot to cover.
There was a lot to cover. There was the COVID-19, cases, and the NHL trade deadline, breaking that down a little bit. Alex Newhook's debut. This was probably the most packed episode I think we've recorded thus far.
100%. Yeah.
100%. So, hour and 15 minutes into it, it's time to roll the outro. So thank you guys for tuning in to Front Range Hockey. Don't forget to follow our show on pretty well any major podcast platform: Google, Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, you name it, we're probably on there. Please give our Twitter account a follow as well. As you can see, our handles scrolling below if you're watching live on YouTube. And if you're listening to this after the fact on audio format, our Twitter account handle is @FrontRNGHockey. Scott, I know we've mentioned it a few times. Where can people find your work?
Oh, you can find my written work generally at coloradohockeynow.com. And then, I'm on Twitter all the time as well for some free content and some opinions that people care about and some people don't care about. A lot of people don't care about. At Off Scott Free. That's at 0FF Scott Free. And hope to see you there. DM me, chat me, follow me. Maybe I'll follow back. Who knows?
Who knows? That's the intrigue.
Yeah.
Mr. Scotty MacD McDonald. So there you go. Well, hey, I'm CC Hawkley, and real quick, I did get some swag in the mail from a site that is a mutual fandom here, Minor League Madness. They interview a lot of old minor league players, past and current minor league players, and they sent me this awesome hoodie. They also sent me 5 of these face masks as well. So
sweet.
So let me show you the logo here. Boom. Minor League Madness.
Oh, dude, I need one.
Yeah. There you have it. So
yeah, tell them to send me one. Or if you guys are listening, I'll support you.
I'll put it out there and say, hey, Scott wants some stuff too.
Yeah.
He wants some swag.
It's a sick hoodie. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very comfortable too. It's got a little skull here on the
nice
sleeve. I'm like, what's this thing called? It's a sleeve. So anyway.
All right.
So yeah. My name is CC Hawkley. You can find my written work at Full Press Hockey. That's www.fullpresshockey.com. Check out this and a ton of other great hockey podcasts, plus other great sports and sports entertainment shows on the Full Press Radio Network at www.fullpresscoverage.com. Nice little menu, nice little option at the top of the website there. You click it, boom, drop down. So many shows. It's great. Thank you once again for listening. Guys, gals, and non-binary pals, episode 14 is in the books. Stay colorful, my friends. We will see you next time.